The twin suns of Rathcore Academy burned high above the red horizon, pouring heat onto the wide training field. It was the most feared military academy in the Outer Rim cluster, a place where young predator species were trained to hunt, fight, and kill. The air smelled of iron, sweat, and challenge. Among the growling cubs and young warriors stood a single human, Eli Warren. He looked completely out of place. No scales, no fangs, no claws, just pale skin, a tired face, and old brown boots covered in dust from worlds far away. The predators around him stared with mixed curiosity and hunger. Humans were rare on Rathcore. They had soft bodies, no natural weapons, and fragile bones. Yet here he was, standing straight under the gaze of the towering alien instructors. "Silence," roared Instructor Vorak, his deep voice shaking the ground. "This is your new classmate, a human. He will train among you for 3 cycles." His golden eyes narrowed. "Do not hold back. If he breaks, he breaks." A low laugh rippled through the young predators. They were wolf-like, reptilian, or furred. Each species carried instinctive pride. To them, Eli looked weak, a prey among hunters. Eli simply nodded. "Understood," he said softly. The first test Vorak dropped a large metal crate in the middle of the field. Inside were several small but fierce razor cubs, predator hatchlings raised for combat drills. The class had to demonstrate teamwork by controlling them. The cubs were fast, strong, and born to bite. When the gate opened, 5 cubs rushed out, growling, biting, testing every scent. The students surrounded them carefully, ready to prove dominance. Eli stayed back, observing. The others moved with aggression, snarls, shouts, noise. He saw fear flash in the cubs' eyes. They were wild children trapped between instinct and discipline. Then one cub, smaller than the rest with silver fur and bright blue eyes, noticed the human. He sniffed the air, tilted his head, and slowly approached. His name was Rak, though Eli didn't know that yet. Rak circled him curiously, tail twitching. He had never seen a creature like this one. The smell was strange, not prey, not predator. Just calm. Eli didn't move. He crouched slightly to seem less threatening. That's when it happened. Rak suddenly lunged forward and bit Eli's boot. A sharp, testing bite. Gasps erupted from the onlookers. The cub growled low, ready to show dominance. The instructors waited for the scream, the panic, the fear. But Eli didn't even flinch. Instead, he looked down and chuckled. "Hey, that tickled." Rak froze. He didn't understand. Why didn't the prey scream? Why did it laugh? Eli slowly knelt down, meeting the cub's bright eyes. "Is that your way of saying hello?" The cub stepped back, confused. No one had ever spoken to him that way. Eli extended a hand, not to hit, but to offer. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're just curious." Rak hesitated, then bit again, this time softer. Eli smiled. "You're testing me, huh?" He gave a gentle tap on the cub's nose. Well, test passed. The field goes silent. The predators around them stared, stunned. To them, biting meant dominance. To Eli, it was play. A reptilian student hissed. "He doesn't even fight back." "He's useless." But Instructor Vorak raised a clawed hand. "Wait." Eli began to imitate the cub's behavior, moving low, rolling slightly, even pretending to bite the air in front of Rak. The cub blinked, tail wagging uncertainly. Then, something unexpected, he playfully pounced. Eli laughed again and rolled with him, letting the cub push him down. "You win," he said dramatically. "Strong teeth, huh?" The cub chirped proudly, a sound that none of the other students had ever heard from a predator cub before, a sound of joy. Soon 2 more cubs joined in. They circled Eli, sniffing, bumping him gently with their heads. He responded to each with a smile or a pat. Within minutes, the entire pack of cubs surrounded the human, not attacking, not afraid, just playing. The observers up on the platform, senior instructors and researchers, watched through observation screens. "He's changing their behavior," said one, recording data. "Impossible," another muttered. "Predator instinct cannot be overridden." "Perhaps not overridden," Vorak said slowly, "but redirected." They watched as Eli sat among the cubs, scratching one behind the ear and talking softly. The cubs purred, a low rumbling vibration of trust. One researcher leaned forward. "He's using tone modulation, the same way we train therapy creatures on Earth." "Therapy?" Vorak snorted. "He's taming killers." Or teaching them another way to bond, the researcher replied. The pack connection hours passed. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the red dirt. The class had finished early, but the cubs refused to return to their cages. They stayed around Eli like guardians. When Vorak approached, the cubs growled. The instructor raised his claw. Enough, Eli said gently. He looked at Rak. It's okay. He's their leader. At that moment, Vorak saw something extraordinary. Rak lowered his head, then stepped back. A cub, barely trained, listened to a human command. That was not instinct. That was trust. Vorak's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Very interesting. He called off the session, ordering everyone back to quarters. But as Eli walked toward the barracks, whispers followed him. The human plays with cubs. They treat him like one of them. Maybe he's not prey after all. For the first time in Wrathcore Academy's history, a human had walked through predator territory without being hunted. The night in the barracks that night, Eli sat alone on his bunk, staring at the stars through the steel window. He touched the faint bite marks on his boot and smiled. Guess I made a friend, he murmured. A soft scratching sound came from the door. He opened it and found Rak sitting outside, tail swishing. Eli knelt. You followed me? Rak tilted his head and let out a small rumble, half growl, half purr. Eli sighed. They'll get mad if they see you here. But the cub pushed past him and curled up beside the bed. Eli laughed quietly. All right then, but no biting while I sleep. He lay down, and within minutes the cub's steady breathing filled the room. For a moment, the human who had seen too many wars and too much loneliness felt peace. The next morning, rumors and warnings by morning, word had spread. When Eli entered the cafeteria, every eye turned toward him. Some were amused, others angry. The idea that a human could tame a predator was insulting to their nature. One large student, a scaled brute named Kor, blocked his path. You think you're one of us because the cub likes you? Eli placed his tray down calmly. No, he said. I think he's one of me. Kor snarled and shoved him. You mock our kind. Eli didn't fight back. He just looked him in the eye. You think strength is about hurting others? Then maybe you're weaker than you believe. Kor roared, swinging his clawed hand, but before he could strike, a loud growl cut through the room. Rak had leapt between them, teeth bared. Everyone froze. Vorak entered seconds later, eyes blazing. Enough! He looked at Eli. You will report to the training field, alone. Now. The instructor's test. When Eli arrived, Vorak stood waiting with 2 armored guards. You are disrupting the natural order, he said. Predators respect dominance, not kindness. I didn't show kindness, Eli replied. I showed understanding. Vorak stepped closer, towering over him. Then prove it. Show me how you control the cubs. He opened the cage again. The cubs rushed out, this time more excited, less afraid. They ran straight toward Eli, tails wagging, bodies vibrating with energy. One jumped up, licking his sleeve. Eli looked at the instructor. I don't control them. I earn them. Vorak stared, studying every move. The cubs sat around Eli in a circle, watching him silently. The human stood tall now. Not as prey, not as leader, but as pack equal. The moment that changed everything. Vorak turned to his aides. Mark this session. The human shows social dominance without aggression. It contradicts predator instinct. But deep inside, Vorak felt something else. A flicker of respect. He remembered the ancient tales of old Earth explorers. Fragile beings who crossed galaxies not because they were strong, but because they refused to fear. Later that evening, Vorak found Eli again. Human, he said. The cub has chosen you, but you must understand our kind respects blood and challenge. If you wish to stay, you'll have to prove yourself in the trial of the pack. Eli raised an eyebrow. Trial? Vorak's teeth glinted. A hunt tomorrow at dawn. Survive it and they'll call you brother. Fail and the jungle will feed on your bones. Eli nodded slowly. Then I guess I better get some sleep. The quiet before the hunt that night, Eli couldn't sleep. Rak lay beside him again, restless. The jungle outside was alive with strange sounds. Howls, screeches, roars. The alien moonlight painted silver lines across the room. Eli stared at the ceiling. He had fought battles before on human worlds in alien wars, but this was different. Here, he wasn't fighting enemies. He was fighting to be understood, he whispered. They think I'm weak, Rak, but strength isn't teeth or claws. Its heart. The cub tilted his head, confused by the words but comforted by the tone. Outside, the jungle wens whispered of coming trials. The academy slept, unaware that something was changing deep in its core. A bond between predator and human that would soon shake everything they believed about survival. As dawn crept closer, Eli closed his eyes and smiled faintly. "Tomorrow," he murmured, "we hunt as one." The twin suns were still hiding behind the mountains when the horns of Wrathcore Academy blew. Their deep metallic sound rolled across the jungle like thunder. Every young predator knew what it meant. The trial of the pack had begun. Eli Warren woke before the sound reached his dorm. He sat up, tied his boots, and looked at the small silver-furred cub sleeping beside his bed. Rock blinked awake and stretched, tail flicking. He could sense the tension in the human's body. "Trial day," Eli whispered. "You ready, little one?" The cub tilted his head as if answering yes. Outside, the air smelled of soil and danger. The training fields were crowded, students sharpening claws, checking weapons, painting their faces with tribal marks. Above them, huge banners flapped in the dry wind. Eli stood quietly. No war paint, no weapon, only calm eyes and steady hands. The challenge announced instructor Vorak appeared on the platform, his scales gleaming under the first rays of dawn. "Today," his voice boomed, "you will hunt the Zarn beast." A collective hiss swept through the trainees. The Zarn was legendary, a predator of predators, armored hide, 4 crimson eyes, and jaws that could crush bone to dust. It lived deep in the jungle canyons where light rarely touched the ground. Vorak's golden eyes moved to Eli. "You are not required to join this trial, human. Yet I hear you volunteered." Eli met his gaze without fear. "I don't want to watch from behind walls. If Rack fights, I fight." A murmur ran through the crowd. One student spat on the ground. "He'll die before the beast sees him." Rack growled at the insult, but Eli simply smiled. "Let's find out." Vorak studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. But remember, the jungle has no pity. If you cannot keep up, you will be left behind." Eli's reply was quiet but firm. "Understood." Into the jungle. The group of 12 trainees entered the jungle before sunrise. The forest was alive with alien sounds, hissing roots, chirping mist bugs, and the distant call of creatures unseen. The air was thick and green, filled with energy and threat. Eli walked near the rear, his eyes scanning, memorizing every movement. He didn't have claws, but he had awareness. Every sound, every shift of the air told him a story. Rock moved beside him, light on his feet, glancing back every few seconds to make sure the human was there. The other trainees noticed and whispered among themselves. "Why does the cub care for him so much?" "Because the human treats him like a brother," another muttered. "Not a pet." The deeper they went, the darker the forest became. The canopy above turned the day into twilight. The ground was soft and full of glowing moss. Insects the size of coins floated like lanterns. Eli could feel eyes watching from the shadows. The Zarn was near. The beast reveals itself. Hours passed before the silence came, the kind that freezes even the wind. Rock's ears twitched. The others crouched low, sniffing the air. Then from the mist, a sound. A low rolling growl that shook the leaves. It emerged slowly from between 2 massive trees. The Zarn beast was larger than a transport vehicle, its body plated with natural armor, black and red like molten rock. 4 eyes glowed with crimson light, and when it opened its mouth, rows of fangs gleamed wet in the dimness. One of the predator students shouted and attacked too early. The beast moved faster than lightning. It swatted him aside, sending his body crashing through trees. The ground trembled. "Form the circle." Vorak shouted from the comms drone above, monitoring the trial. The young predators spread out, forming a loose ring around the creature. They slashed and darted in, testing its reactions. But the beast was clever. It waited for weakness. Eli stayed close to Rock, watching the others. He saw the problem. Their attacks were random, not coordinated. The Zarn countered each one easily. They needed rhythm, a pattern. He took a deep breath. "Rack, tell them, strike left when it lunges, not before." Rock looked at him unsure, but then barked a sharp command in predator tongue. The others hesitated, then obeyed. The Zarn lunged right, expecting panic. Instead, the left flank struck at once, drawing its attention. Eli threw a rock at its upper eye, just enough to distract. Rack leapt for the joint at its leg, claws digging deep. For the first time, the beast stumbled. The fight turn's adrenaline surged through the group. They attacked again, this time with purpose. Eli moved like a dancer, rolling, shouting orders, using his voice to guide timing. Now jump! Move! His tone carried something primal that cut through species barriers. Even the cubs responded as if they understood every word. The Zarn roared in fury, tail sweeping across the ground like a whip. Eli saw it coming. Down! He shouted. The tail smashed into a tree, missing them by inches. Shards of bark rained down. Rack pounced again, this time biting through a weak point behind the creature's foreleg. Blood spilled, a thick, glowing blue. The beast screamed and slammed its body against the ground, trying to crush Rack. Eli ran forward without thinking. He dived, grabbing the cub and rolling away just in time. Pain shot through his arm as claws grazed his shoulder. He ignored it, clutching Rack tight. You okay, buddy? He gasped. The cub licked his cheek once, affirmative. The others were frozen for a second, shocked that a human had risked himself for a cub. Eli stood up, breathing hard. Don't just stand there, he yelled. Together! Something in his voice snapped them back to focus. They surrounded the Zarn again, this time moving as one unit. The jungle echoed with their growls and the humans' shouts, blending into a single rhythm, instinct and reason, fury and focus. It ended when Eli picked up a long spear dropped by another trainee and threw it with all his strength. The weapon pierced the beast's throat, right as Rack leapt and tore at its neck. The Zarn let out one last guttural cry and fell with a crash that shook the ground. Then, silence. The aftermath, for a moment, nobody spoke. The air was thick with dust and disbelief. The predators looked at the fallen creature, then at the human standing before it, blood-streaked, exhausted, eyes burning with quiet fire. Rack walked up beside him, tail wagging slowly. Then, in front of everyone, he pressed his head against Eli's leg, a gesture of respect and pack loyalty. One by one, the others followed. They lowered their heads, touching the ground in the ancient sign of unity. Even Kor, the one who had mocked him, did the same. High above, Vorak watched through his drone feed. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he whispered, "The human doesn't lead with dominance. He leads with heart." He ordered the group back. "Return to base," he said through the communicator. Trial complete. The walk back. The jungle seemed quieter on the way home. The cubs carried fragments of the Zarn's armor as trophies. Eli carried only his damaged spear, using it as a walking stick. His shoulder hurt, but he didn't care. Rack stayed glued to his side. Occasionally, the cub made a low humming sound, almost like a song. Eli smiled. "What's that?" Rack's voice was rough, broken, but understandable. "Pack song," Eli chuckled softly. "Then keep singing." Behind them, the other predators watched silently. Something inside them had changed. The human they once mocked now walked as one of them. Not above, not below. Equal. The ceremony of bloodback at the academy. The surviving trainees knelt before Vorak and the Council of Elders. A ceremonial fire burned in the center of the field. The head counselor, an ancient creature with obsidian horns, spoke first. "The hunt is over," he declared. "The beast has fallen. Who among you struck the final blow?" Rack stepped forward proudly. "We all did," he said, glancing at Eli. The crowd murmured. The counselor frowned. "A cub cannot speak for the pack," Rack growled softly. "Not just a cub. A pack brother." Vorak's voice rumbled through the air. "He speaks truth. Without the human, none would have survived." The counselor's eyes narrowed. "A human? Impossible. They are weak." Eli stepped forward calmly. "Weak doesn't mean worthless," he said. "Maybe strength isn't what you think it is." Silence fell. The fire crackled. The words echoed in every heart. After a long pause, the elder lifted his claw. "Then let the marks be given." Rack dipped his paw in the Zarn's glowing blood and pressed it against Eli's chest. A bright blue mark spread across his shirt, a symbol of pack kinship. The crowd gasped. It was the first time in history that a predator had marked a human as one of its own. Vorak watched with a strange look in his eyes. Part pride, part worry. He knew what this meant. The academy, the council, even the military command would not accept such a bond easily. But in that moment he didn't stop it. Because what he saw was something ancient. A truth older than species and wars. The instinct to belong. The night after later, under the twin moons, the pack gathered outside the dorms. Eli sat by the campfire, his arm bandaged, his face lit by orange flames. The cubs surrounded him, resting their heads on his lap. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "You did great today, Rock." Rock's ears twitched. "We did," Eli smiled tiredly. "Yeah, we did." Across the camp, Vorak stood in the shadows, speaking softly into his communicator. "The council will not like this," he said. "They fear what they do not understand." A voice replied from the other side, cold and sharp. "Then make them understand or make them forget." Vorak's eyes darkened. "And if neither works?" The voice was silent for a moment, then said, "Then remove the human, quietly." Vorak looked toward the fire where Eli laughed softly with the cubs. His jaw tightened. That won't be easy, because the pack had already chosen. The morning after the hunt felt different. The academy's air, once filled with growls and pride, now pulsed with whispers. Every hallway, every den carried one name: Eli Warren. The human who had survived the trial. The human who had led a pack of predators. The human who was no longer an outsider. But not everyone celebrated. High in the obsidian tower of the council hall, 11 elders gathered around a glowing table. Their scaled faces reflected the blue fire of the data screens showing Eli's hunt footage. The human shouting commands. The pack obeying. The final mark of blood on his chest. When the clip ended, the chamber fell silent. "He undermines our hierarchy," hissed Elder Corin, his fangs bared. "He unites them through mercy," said another, voice trembling. "If the packs follow such thinking, our control will break." Vorak stood apart, arms crossed. He didn't undermine them. He gave them purpose. "Purpose is not the law," Corin growled. "Remove him before he infects the rest." The decision came fast. Eli Warren was to be expelled from Wrathcore Academy. No trial, no warning. Humans, they said, were never meant to belong among predators. The summons that afternoon, 2 armored guards arrived at Eli's quarters. The door slid open with a hiss and sunlight fell on him sitting with Rack and the other cubs repairing their training gear. "Eli Warren," one guard said stiffly. "By order of the High Council, you are to leave the academy before dusk." Rack's ears flattened. "Leave?" he hissed. "Why?" Eli stood calm but tense. "Orders are orders." "I'll go," the guard added coldly. "You have been deemed disruptive to discipline." The words hit harder than any blade. Eli nodded slowly. "Give me 1 hour to pack my things." When the guards left, the room fell quiet except for the low growl of the cubs. Rack stood trembling. "They punish you for saving us." Eli smiled faintly. "Sometimes doing right isn't what people want. It's what they need." Rack shook his head violently. "No, we are pack." "Pack never leave!" Eli crouched to his level. "Listen to me, little one. If I stay, they'll hurt you. They'll separate us all. You have to stay safe, understand?" Rack's eyes shimmered. "We fight." Eli placed a hand on his head. "No fighting. Not this time." The silent march when dusk arrived, the academy gates opened. Dozens of students lined the paths, whispering as Eli walked through, carrying a single pack on his shoulder. His boots left marks on the red dust. The suns had begun to sink, painting the sky gold and violet. The cubs stood far behind the fence, my Rack at the front, tail low, eyes wet. Vorak approached him halfway. "You know they fear what they don't understand," he said. Eli gave a tired smile. "Fear is just the shadow of change." Vorak hesitated. "If you step outside those gates, you can never return." "I know." Vorak's deep voice softened. "You made them believe in something I forgot long ago." Eli looked at him. "And what's that?" "That strength and kindness can live in the same heart." They shook hands, warrior and teacher, and then Eli turned toward the gates. As the doors began to close behind him, a thunderous growl echoed across the grounds. Then another. And another. The rebellion of the pack from the dens, the cubs burst out, racing toward the gate. Rack led the charge, teeth bared, eyes blazing. The guards shouted, but the cubs didn't stop. They leapt over barriers, sprinting through the dust. "Rack, stop!" Eli shouted, but it was too late. The young predators surrounded him, growling at the guards who had drawn their pulse rods. Rack stood between Eli and the soldiers. "He is pack!" He roared in the predator tongue. Every cub echoed his cry, a sound that shook the entire academy. The elders watching from the tower could hear it, a wild, beautiful defiance that no law could silence. Vorak stepped forward. "Stand down," he barked. But when the guards moved, the cubs growled louder, tails bristling, ready to fight. Eli raised his voice. "Enough, please." The cubs froze at once because it was not a command of dominance but of care. Eli knelt beside Rock. "If you fight, you'll be punished. You'll lose everything." Rock's voice trembled. "Then we go with you." Eli shook his head. "You belong here. You have a future." "I'm just a traveler." Tears. Real tears rolled down the cub's scaled cheek. "Then we sing for you." He lifted his head and howled. The others joined, a deep harmonic cry that rose to the heavens. The human's howl, as it would later be called. Every creature on Rathkor heard it. Even the elders felt something crack inside their cold hearts. Eli closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He had never felt such belonging. Not on Earth, not anywhere. When the howls faded, he stood. "Thank you, Rock. Lead them well." The gates opened just enough for one man to walk through. He looked back once. The cubs were lined in silence, watching him go, a pack mourning not with tears but with pride. The aftermath days passed. The academy returned to its routines, but the change lingered like scent in the wind. Predator trainees began helping each other, sharing food, training side by side without constant rivalry. Something new was growing: trust. The elders tried to suppress it, but even they could not stop a story carried in whispers. The human fought beside us. The human led with his heart. The human became pack. Vorik watched it all with quiet satisfaction. He had received orders to erase all footage of the human, but instead he encrypted it, hiding it deep within the academy servers. "One day," he murmured, "they'll need to remember." Rock grew quickly in those months. His silver fur turned darker, his body stronger, but he never forgot. Every night before sleep, he looked at the moon and whispered the words Eli had taught him. Strength is not teeth or claws. It is heart. Years later, the jungles of Rathkor had changed. New students trained under a new banner, one that bore both claw and hand intertwined. Instructors no longer spoke only of dominance. They taught unity. Packs now mixed species. Rivalries became bonds. At the center of it all stood a grown predator, tall and powerful, his eyes bright blue. Rock, now the youngest commander in academy history. One evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon, he stood before the same gates where Eli once walked away. His voice rumbled softly. "You said you'd return, Pack brother. I'm still waiting." Behind him, trainees gathered for the annual trial of the Pack. For the first time ever, it included humans. The new generation stepped forward, fragile, determined, fearless, and Rock felt something in his chest warm with pride. Vorak, now old and scarred, approached from behind. "He would be proud," the instructor said. Rock looked up at the stars. "He still is. I hear him when they howl." Beyond Rathkor, far away, on a small ship drifting through deep space, a message replayed on a cracked screen. It was a recording from the Academy's surveillance, the cubs howling as Eli walked away. Eli sat alone in the cockpit, gray streaks in his hair, eyes wet with quiet memory. He reached down, touching the faded blue paw mark on his chest plate. The blood mark had dried years ago, but the meaning never had. He smiled. "Looks like you did it, kid." Outside the window, a distant planet shimmered. Rathkor bathed in twin sunlight. Eli whispered, "Home." He turned the ship toward it. The engines glowed blue. Somewhere in the jungles below, Rock lifted his head, sensing something. A familiar heartbeat returning across the stars. He howled. Eli laughed through tears. "Yeah, I hear you too." The legend generations later, cadets of all species learned about the human of the Pack. Some thought it myth. Others swore it was history. They said he came from a soft world and walked into a den of predators. They said he taught them laughter, patience, and courage. They said he left with nothing, yet changed everything. And in the jungles under the twin moons, Packs still sing one ancient song. A deep, unbroken howl that carries across time and space. It speaks of a truth that no law could silence. We hunted him. He stayed. We bit him. He laughed. We tested him. He led. We called him prey. He became Pack. Epilogue. The howl in the stars centuries later, when explorers from the Terran Federation visited Rathkor Prime, they recorded something astonishing. At night, the entire jungle echoed with synchronized howls. Millions of voices, predator and human, singing in harmony. When asked what it meant, the old commander simply smiled. "It's how we remember him," he said. "The first one who showed us that the heart beats louder than the hunt." And above the glowing jungle, among the twin moons, a constellation burned brighter than all the rest, a shape like a man surrounded by wolves. They called it the Humans Pack, and every night, its light reminded the galaxy that even in a universe full of monsters, kindness could still roar.